NCTV45, The Train, anytime on your time. The Cedars is a great restaurant with outstanding Mediterranean food. The Cedars takeout menu is second to none, featuring pizza, stromboli, hoagies, their famous lamb on the rod, and so much more. So when you're hungry and you want that Newcastle taste, make it Cedars. Now with 2 locations in Newcastle, 827 Addis Street on the east side and 1101 Highland Avenue. Call Cedars East 724-658-9260 or Cedars North 724-652-7657.
The Beanery Depot and Deli. Coffee, made-to-order subs, snacks, and more. Meatball sandwiches, fresh and hot. Pepperoni rolls, fish sandwiches, chicken, milkshakes. The Beanery Deli. When you're hungry for something special, and it won't cost you a lot of beans.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Cedars Sports Corner here on NCTV45. We are the 360 Sports Network Fantasy Toolkit. We're here to bring you all of your fantasy sports information that you need so you can dominate your fantasy leagues. I want to give a special thanks to everybody here at NCTV45 and NC Radio 450 for allowing us to provide you with this fantasy insight. We'll be here talking fantasy football, fantasy basketball, baseball, anything that you want in the world of fantasy sports. Some introductions real quick. I'm James, the Value Man Dotson. He's Alex, the Saint DeLaverson. We're just 2 of a panel of fantasy experts here that are going to be giving a bunch of unique ideas. You also hear from Greg, the Mad Scientist Bashero, Jordan, the Goat Tanner, and our new invitee, Jay, the Kid Kilpatrick. And our roundtable discussions hopefully will give you lots of great insight in the world of fantasy sports. So let's get this show on the road.
Alrighty.
We're going to begin talking about some fantasy rankings. We're going to go through quarterbacks, running backs, then wideouts and tight ends. We'll hit quarterbacks and running backs today. All of these rankings you can actually go and check out if you follow us on Twitter at 3SN Fantasy. And, of course, you can also look back and find previous recordings of this show and of other podcasts on our Twitter and Facebook pages as well. Alex, we're going to be talking about a lot of standard leagues. Explain what we mean by that first off.
Our saying is know your league, because far too many times have people gone into leagues and they don't even know their own scoring system. It's very common for passing touchdowns to be counted with 6 points instead of the standard 4. And that little difference actually makes a gigantic difference in terms of who you want on your team and how you want to draft and build your team.
So when we say standard, we're saying 4 points for the passing touchdown, 6 for rushing touchdown, no PPR, no points per reception. When we say, obviously, PPR, we're going to talk a little bit differently in that. So let's first run down those quarterback rankings. These are the consensus rankings based on our whole round table and also using our customizable cheat sheets. And we'll just run down first the top 10. Number 1 coming through is Cam Newton. Number 2, Aaron Rodgers. Number 3, Russell Wilson. Number 4, Andrew Luck. Number 5, Ben Roethlisberger. 6 through 10, Drew Brees, Carson Palmer, Blake Bortles, Tyrod Taylor, and Tom Brady rounding out the top 10. Now, Alex, the first things first, Cam Newton, Aaron Rodgers. Kind of a 1A, 1B type ordeal. You really can't go wrong with either, right?
No, you can't. And I think there is a very big drop-off after those first 2 quarterbacks. And we talked about this earlier. There seems to be a lot of parity among the quarterbacks this year, and actually parity among a lot of positions this year. But the thing is, when it comes to Newton and Rodgers, there's definitely a big drop-off. And I would say the thing I like most about Cam Newton, I think the reason why we all have him at number 1 is that he's continued to improve as a passer. He had 11 more touchdowns than he did the previous year from last year. He had 35 touchdowns last year. And he's also a very good running quarterback. He's big, he's physical, he almost looks like a tight end.
He is the goal line back. I mean, we talk about when we get to running backs, you'll hear us talking about goal line backs, third down backs, splitting carries. He is the goal line back for Carolina, and that's a big part of it right there.
And he also has weapons. I mean, Kelvin Benjamin finally coming back. Funchess, he's very capable wide receiver. So you have to think now that he's going to have a better year because he has more parts and more weapons to throw to.
And I definitely agree that he and Rodgers, if you can get either one of those, the main problem is you don't want to get either one too early. You don't want to make any stretch for these guys because the quarterback depth is, very, very deep. We can go 16, 18 deep. We'll get more into that later. Talk to me about Aaron Rodgers, though.
What I like about Aaron Rodgers is, one, he is obviously Aaron Rodgers. He's an elite quarterback. And obviously last year wasn't his best year by any means. Problems with the offensive line. Jordy Nelson was out. It took them a while to get Janice involved. I think it was towards the playoffs. But you'd have to think this year things are going to be shaping up a little better. Eddie Lacy's going to be hopefully in more shape. Reports are that he is in
He can't
better
be in
shape.
any worse shape than last year.
Exactly. Throwing to Cobb.
Cook's up there now as well and tight end. So there's lots of things. And Rodgers is going to be Rodgers. He's going to do his thing. More importantly, too, if you have a lot of points for turnovers, then Aaron Rodgers really jumps up because he does not turn the ball over nearly as much as pretty much any other quarterback in this list. Big Ben at number 5. I really like Big Ben. I'll let you go and yell at him at one point here in a second. But Big Ben, for me, he's going to get a lot of yards. He's going to do what he does. The issue is he's probably going to miss a game or two. He almost does every year. So if you do get Ben, maybe get a backup late, you're not nearly as big. You think he's a little overvalued?
I think so. I mean, only 3 times in his career has he played all 16 games. That is obviously telling. And Martavis Bryant, he's out for the year. And, the past 2 seasons when Bryant wasn't there, his value dropped significantly. And now he's not going to have him at all for the whole year. And, of course, he's still going to have Antonio Brown there. But, just the way he gets hurt and just the fact he always seems to be prone to injuries. I mean, he's great with yards. Don't get me wrong. Light on the touchdowns, though. Only, 19 last year, 21 the year before. And in 2 of those games, he threw for 12 touchdowns, and those were against injury-riddled defenses.
Right. So maybe it's a little bit of overkill here or there. And
that's what I would say.
Yeah, and that's very telling. We've had him ranked, one of us has him ranked as high as 2, one of them as low as 9 on our position ranking. So keep that in mind as you're going through him. Tyrod Taylor is somebody who I'm really big at. 9 times last year, he had over 40 rushing yards. That's 4 free fantasy points that nobody else gets. Tyrod Taylor, most people don't have him anywhere near their top 10. When you put in projected stats and you look anywhere in terms of projected stats and punch in your scoring system, he's a top 5 quarterback. So
he has weapons, too.
He has weapons up there, too. LaShawn McCoy out of the backfield is going to catch a lot of passes.
Sammy Watkins healthy is really, really good.
That's the big thing. If they all stay healthy, he'll be very good. But the big issue is if you don't get one of those top guys, don't go and stretch and reach for one. There's 16 projected quarterbacks to throw over 4,000 yards, Alex. How crazy is that?
Yeah, and that's what we were talking about earlier, parity.
Right.
And even if I have a top 5 pick, I'm probably not going with a quarterback. And again, this would probably come into the whole know your league thing, is passing touchdowns, 6 points, but we're going with 4 points.
Even with that, no, not anywhere in the first 3 rounds.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It still wouldn't even kind of go into that realm a little.
And those 4,000-yard passers, that doesn't even include your running quarterbacks like the Tyrod Taylors, the Cam Newtons, and the Russell Wilsons. So that's really pretty crazy. All right, we'll come back here in a moment. When we come back, we're going to look at the running backs and some of their rankings and how we rank them, because you think there's parity in quarterbacks, Alex? There's that much worse when it comes to running backs.
That's going to be fun doing
So we'll be back here in a moment here on the Cedars Sports Jam.
Come to Big Polly's Sports Bar in Newcastle.
The place is spacious with all the seating you'll need, with 2 bars and a huge menu that features wings, pizza, sandwiches, burgers, pasta, and fries.
Big Polly's
Is just right to watch the game. You'll love the sports memorabilia throughout the bar. There's plenty of parking too.
Big Polly's Sports Bar.
in Newcastle at 207 East Long Avenue. Call 724-658-8800. That's 658-8800. Gentlemen, if you want to look your best with high-quality clothing, then I recommend Main Street Clothiers and Custom Tailors in downtown Newcastle. Mike Caggiano is the owner, and he and his staff have been in the business for decades, and they will always give you the right recommendations. They also carry Rondinelli tuxedos. That's Main Street Clothiers and Custom Tailors, 210 East Washington Street, downtown Newcastle. Call 724-652-3851.
Welcome back to the Cedars Sports Corner. It's time for more fantasy football talk here. He's the Saint. I'm the Value Man. He's the Saint because, and we'll get more into this throughout all the shows, you follow the fantasy football rules to the T. That's why he's the Saint. He doesn't break those fantasy 10 commandments. I'm the Value Man because I'm going to talk about value all the time and what one guy has more value than another. And using value is very important everywhere in fantasy football, and I think very much so here with the running backs because there's so much parity. We have such disparity in terms of our rankings, especially. You really have to dig very deep into what's going to be valuable for your team. So we'll move on to the running back rankings, and these are, again, our consensus rankings. So coming in at number 1, David Johnson. Number 2, Adrian Peterson. Number 3, Todd Gurley. Number 4, Le'Veon Bell, even with the 3-game suspension. Lamar Miller at number 5. 6 through 10, Jamal Charles, LaShawn McCoy, Ezekiel Elliott, Mark Ingram, and Doug Martin. And just for the next few, Devonta Freeman, Eddie Lacy, Thomas Rawls, DeMarco Murray, and C.J. Anderson to kind of round out the top 15. But talk about disparity right away. 4 experts went into these polls, 4 different guys at number 1. I said Lamar Miller. Mm-hmm. You said Todd Gurley. Mm-hmm. Mad Scientist said David Johnson, and the kid said Adrian Peterson.
Right.
So right then and there, we're already having a lot of issues. Usually, running backs. That's what you got to get, right? Not anymore, and we don't even know which running back to get. So let's start with the guy that you like best.
I think the thing that most impressed me about Gurley is he missed his first 3 weeks playing, and he still managed 1,100 yards rushing and also 10 touchdowns. And that is pretty big, especially missing the first 3 weeks, especially missing the beginning of the season where chemistry and things like that, really need to be panned out. And also, look at their quarterback situation. They're going to have to rely on Gurley. They're going to have to.
That's a good point.
And this is a guy who averaged 4.8 yards per carry. And he is a rare player in the sense that he has speed, strength, and intelligence all in one. And that's really hard to find a running back that has all of those attributes into one.
And maybe injury concern. I mean, like you said, he missed some games last year. He missed games in college, obviously. That might be the only reason maybe you shy away. But here's what I'm going to say, and tell me if you agree with this. Any running back out there, you almost have to expect them nowadays to miss a game or two throughout a season.
Well, yeah. I mean, everyone's going to have their own injury concerns. Every player there is has usually an issue they deal with. But we talked about parity this year with both quarterbacks and running backs. So as far as safe bets, I'm putting Todd Gurley at number 1, and I still have Adrian Peterson at number 2. And, everyone's going to say, oh, he's 31 years old. But the thing is, when it comes to Adrian Peterson, 31 years old is more like 29 for him.
Right. And I think the big thing for AP, you know what you're going to get. Now, he won't be on the field for third downs more than likely, but the fact of the matter is he's going to get his touches, he's going to get his yards. He has a very high floor, meaning that he's going to get up to about 1,000 yards, no doubt. He doesn't exactly throw me as somebody who's going to break out and maybe get 2,000, but at the same time, take that consistency.
Well, no, okay, so he doesn't get 2,000 yards this year. I mean, hey, you never know. Maybe he does. But look, he still almost got 1,500 yards rushing last year, and that was with a depleted line. And now they're getting back, John Sullivan and Phil Lodehold after they missed all of last year, and they also added Alex Boone. So they're addressing that.
And yeah,
It can only get better
He's
this year,
31
compared to
too.
last anyway.
He's 31, yeah, but
And-
he also has one less year under his belt because of that suspension year. So
Exactly.
it's not like he's got all this mileage on him. He's actually a little bit less than that. So Adrian Peterson, I think we all agree, is definitely up there, and he's definitely the safest, I think, of all of them, no doubt about
Absolutely.
it. I really like Lamar Miller as my number one guy. 25 years old, going to a new team. He's had 10 touchdowns a year the last 2-3 years, and now he's going to an offense that has turned essential no-names into great Pro Bowl-type running backs. I mean, Alfred Blue had 4 times last year where he had over 100 yards rushing, and he was splitting time for a good chunk of that year with a couple other quote-unquote no-name running backs. So I really like him. Bill O'Brien loves to run the ball first. I think that he can be a big guy in a new place, and not to mention, I'm not an Osweiler fan either, so I don't see them going and throwing the ball 10 million times a game. I think it's going to focus around Lamar Miller. He can be a 25 touch per game type of player.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And, Osweiler might not be a star quarterback by any means, but I think he's capable. And having at least a capable quarterback really opens up things for your running backs.
Now, the number one on our sheet again was David Johnson in Arizona, and he came out really strong at the end once he finally got the official starting role away from Chris Johnson. He went and ran with it. No pun intended. And I think we can expect the same from him this year. The question still is, though, will Chris Johnson eat into some carries? Maybe that's why some people have him lower. We both have him third on our sheets. But when you look at the projected stats, when we put those in, he comes up at number 1. So I can't argue him being gone first. Now, before we go any further, I want to talk about this first round of the draft, because more often than not, if you're doing mock drafts, you want to see wideouts are probably going 1-2, 1-2-3 for sure. That's when the running backs start going, is maybe middle of the first round. Is that something you're in agreement with, or do you think maybe you should be going for more of a running back centric offense at the beginning?
Normally, we say running backs are king, but just from the parity standpoint from the quarterbacks and running backs this year, I'm not as urgent to get one as I have been in previous years. Just other than AP and Gurley, there's no separation almost. And even if you get a chance to get an Adrian Peterson or a Todd Gurley, you're going to have opportunities to get other running backs if you pass on them and go with the wide receiver first.
And I think it's just such a wideout-heavy league. Maybe
Yes.
people pick wideouts earlier, and then maybe you can get some of these guys like a McCoy or a Jamal Charles all the way into the early to mid-second round. If so, that's when I think you jump on it for sure. Let's talk about some of those guys in the 6 to 10 range on our sheets. Charles, McCoy, Ezekiel Elliott, Mark Ingram, Doug Martin. Any one of those guys really stick out to you, Alex, as one that maybe I'm going to target before the other ones there? Charles, McCoy, Elliott, Ingram.
Well, I know you're not going to like Ezekiel Elliott.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, but let's keep in mind that offensive line is the best in the league. A rookie can succeed well in there. So I do have them considerably high, I would say. Honestly, though, as far as Jamal Charles goes, I actually think he's overvalued. I mean, look, he's 29 years old, and like I said, Adrian Peterson's 31, but this is different for Charles. He's coming off his second ACL tear.
That's it right there. Injury
And that is
concern.
just so huge. And, he's always been one of my favorite running backs, but I am probably one of the few people that have Thomas Rawls from Seattle high.
You have him
at
ranked
number 6.
Right, and everybody
Yeah.
else, the next highest that any of us have
Yes.
is 13. I
Well,
think there
this-
might be a timeshare. What do you think?
Well, yeah, but here's the thing, though, and just hear me out. The issue is he going to be healthy and stay on the field? When he is on the field, he's absolutely great. 147 carries for 830 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 9 catches for 76 yards and a touchdown. So if you translate that into a 16-game season, you have 1,899 yards rushing and 11 touchdowns on 336 carries, and you also have 16 catches for 181 yards.
Now, here's my question to you. When's the last time he played a full season?
It's been since high school. And that is the thing. So I'm saying, because of the parity there in the running back field, I think that really makes him stand out to me.
He is a boomer bust. There's no doubt about it. I guess my thought is if I'm going to take somebody that high, I'm going to take the most sure bet that I can find, and he's going to be somebody to stay away from it. So something to keep an eye on for sure there. We mentioned Zeke Elliott. I don't like rookies, period. Especially rookie running backs. I don't care what great system he's going into. Yes, he very well could go and rush for 1,500 yards, but fact of the matter is you're going from a 12, 13, 14 game schedule to a 16 game schedule with no cupcakes, a lot bigger, stronger guys. I don't know the last time that a rookie running back was starting from day one and made it through all 16 games of a season without there being an injury. So I guess that's my main thing for Zeke Elliott, because, yeah, he could be great. At the same time, if they're smart down there in Dallas, they're going to play guys like McFadden just to kind of save Zeke a little bit too.
Yeah, so you have him, as the 12th best running back on the board.
Yeah.
And, I had him at 8, and Greg the Mad Scientist had him at number 9. So even though, you're not high on rookies, and that's obviously, a good, intelligent thought to have, but, being, let's say, the 12th best running back, if you wait till later rounds to get a running back, which I wouldn't go that late, but if you need a running back and you're in your later rounds of your draft, grab him.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I think that if he can get into the late second round, that's when I'm going after him. He'll probably be gone by then because everybody else is a lot bigger on him than I am. Another guy who's really getting a lot of praise, and I'm not sure why, Devonta Freeman is a top 10 type of running back. So I really worry of that because when you put projections in, he's actually closer to number 18, 19, 20. So not as big a fan on him for sure. There's lots of guys later on, though, in this draft that you can find and get starting running backs very late in the draft. And I think that's a big part of it, too, that you can get like the Melvin Gordons, Carlos Hydes. Amir Abdullah's way down there in the 6th, 7th, 8th round. That's who you have to target.
I think the theme is here is even though, you might have the 6th best running back available, you still don't have to get one till the
Branding Iron Bar and Grill, a great place to gather.
Some examples from the menu: 45-cent jumbo wings with 30 different kinds of sauce, meatball sub and fries, $5.50, hot cheese balls and burgers, and delicious large sandwiches. Stop in during happy hour, 4:30 to 7:30. You can dine in or take out. The Branding Iron Bar and Grill is located at 2221 Ben Franklin Highway, Edinburgh. Call 724-658-1210.
Welcome back to NCTV 45, the Cedars Sports Corner, also on NC Radio 450. I'm James. He's Alex. Sorry, Alex, kind of cut you off there on your talk with the running backs. You can check out all of our position rankings. So if you go on our Twitter page at 3SN Fantasy, you can check all that out. Some detailed explanations there as well. All your fantasy needs, including our customizable cheat sheets as well. The position rankings for wideout and tight end will come on next week's show. So in the meantime, what we're going to focus on is something you hear a lot of: the sleepers and the players to avoid, and maybe some of those undervalued guys that you maybe want to buy earlier, or guys you don't want to buy too quickly. And we're going to start with the sleeper picks, so that's what everybody wants to see. Who are those guys who are falling down, and people aren't falling down on draft boards, I should say, and we're not looking at him? One of the quarterbacks, we didn't even get a chance to talk about him, David Carr. You really like what he can do out there?
I really like Carr, and his first 4 weeks are against opponents with really weak pass defenses. The Saints, Falcons, Titans, and the Ravens don't have the best pass defense, so that is something to keep in mind. And also, I know you're not as high on as Amari Cooper as some people are, but he's pretty capable. And, Michael Crabtree kind of settled into his niche as a number 2 wide out there, so he's capable. He has weapons there. Obviously, a great running back, and Zach Miller at tight end. I mean, I would say he's kind of undervalued, I guess.
Yeah, he definitely is. But again, the quarterbacks are deep, and you talk sleeper. I mean, I just said David Carr. He's definitely a sleeper. We're talking about Derek Carr here, obviously, younger bro.
That's what I was wondering. I was like, wait, I got the name right, Derek Carr. Right?
Yes, no, that's completely on me, and that's the way it works around here. We mentioned Tyrod Taylor as another quarterback that's definitely worth getting. How about some quarterbacks really late in the draft? You can get like a Matt Stafford or a Matt Ryan as like the 17th or 18th quarterback off of the board. They're going to be almost 4,000-yard passers, Alex. You can't argue with any of them. And do you trust Ryan Tannehill? He could be a sleeper. I personally don't. He's somebody I'm going to avoid him personally. But at quarterback, between Tyrod Taylor and your guy and Derek Carr, those are guys who are going a lot lower than what their projected stats say. And maybe it's because it's Buffalo and Oakland. I'm not sure, but I think you got to go after guys like that.
Well, yeah, look, and I even think if you're in leagues where, people have the same mindset as us. You know, you're not going crazy over the quarterbacks. I think some of the guys you just named might not even get drafted. I'm not saying wait till, you know, free agency to go pick up one of those guys. But the point is, you know, there's going to be some pretty good value for quarterback in the very late rounds there.
You can get Matt Ryan on free agency week 1 and start him immediately, and I'd have no problem with that, to be honest.
One guy I would avoid, though, is Teddy Bridgewater. Very, very bad arm strength, you know, so long throws are going to be a problem with him. He plays with that Alex Smith mindset, you know, not to lose. And, you know, just the whole better to not throw an interception and better off, you know.
Right.
I'm not going to throw into the tight spaces type of thing.
Ryan Fitzpatrick, I think, is another one you have to be a little bit concerned about because he doesn't always put up the big numbers. Now, he and Marshall have been really good together, and actually Brandon Marshall's my a big sleeper for me. But just to finish on Fitzpatrick, you have to worry about the fact that, yeah, he'll have games where he throws for 100 yards and only 1 touchdown, but he can also be consistent for 4 or 5 weeks in a row. So be careful and don't overdraft, especially a guy like Fitzpatrick. But Brandon Marshall, you know he led the league last year in 100-yard games? It's something that you don't think of, but he had 10 times out of his 16 games that he was in the century mark. He had 7 touchdowns last year, and now he gets to battle with Antonio Brown over over those the Rolls-Royce and the cars and everything. So look for the battle. Look for Brandon Marshall to do what he always does. Another guy at wide receiver, Demaryius Thomas. Yes, I know Manning's gone, Osweiler's gone. I know it's Mark Sanchez who, I mean, if you want to talk about avoid, you avoid him like the plague. But Demaryius Thomas, he even put up numbers when Tim Tebow was his quarterback, Alex. So keep that in mind. If he can do it with Tebow, he can do it with butt fumble.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Demaryius Thomas is absolutely really capable. And like you said, you know, if obviously Tebow was a winner, but he wasn't the best pure quarterback. So he's absolutely capable enough to rack up some fantasy points for you.
Definitely. Let's look at some quick players to avoid possibly. I'm not a fan, definitely at tight end, of Julius Thomas, just because he can't play a whole season. So I'm staying as far away from him as possible. The other targets in Jacksonville at wideout especially, much, much better. Jarvis Landry, I'm actually getting close to avoiding him. Even though he's potentially a top 10 wide receiver, I don't trust Tannehill. So you can only trust Jarvis Landry as much as you can trust a Ryan Tannehill. Other guys to avoid that we've listed, C.J. Anderson maybe, just too many questions there at quarterback. Maybe they stack the box a little bit. Forte, now moving to the Jets. He missed 3 games last year. I mean, he hadn't missed many before that, so watch injuries, and Bilal Powell's done well up there. He'll get a lot of carries sort of thing. So those are some main guys to avoid.
If you're in the later rounds and you can get him, get him. Yeah. You know, but I wouldn't go crazy over him.
I wouldn't either. Now let's talk about some of those who we're going to say maybe overvalued. We're not saying avoid these guys completely, but too many people you see in these mock drafts that have been going on are reaching too far to get them. And the top one for me, Jordy Nelson. He's still a little bit hurt from his ACL tear last year in preseason. He's not fully back to 100%. I worry that he might miss a couple games, especially early in the season. Yes, again, he could be another top 10 wideout, Alex, but I don't think you can take him quite that early, at least not as early as everybody else is going to. You agree with that?
I think that's a very fair thing to say. Although, yeah, it is a health issue. So, but if his health issues subside, then you don't have to worry about it. And I don't know. ACL's definitely, a big thing there. But I would say even with, his health issues, he's still capable. He's still somewhat, if you have a chance to get him in later rounds, get him.
Oh, definitely. Other guys that we are not going to buy the hype on, DeMarco Murray, he's going to split too much with Derrick Henry first off. That Titans offense looked great in week 1. Not quite as good in week 2, though, of the preseason. So keep your eye on that. We mentioned Jamal Charles earlier. We mentioned Devonta Freeman. Just to finish that thought, he's also going to split carries with Tevin Coleman. So keep an eye on that one happening. And we kind of mentioned this earlier. Any of the rookies, I'm not going to reach for them. Even, the Treadwells and the Josh Doxsons of the world, I'm not going to go and rush out and get them. Definitely not at quarterback. None of the rookie quarterbacks are going to do anything this year, fantasy-wise.
And that's kind of what I was trying to say before our last break, is even though I wouldn't rush out necessarily to get Ezekiel Elliott, he is still, number 6 running back by most projectors, and you can get potentially the 6th best running back in a later rounds.
Exactly. So keep an eye on those. Those are our sleepers, our players to avoid, and those overvalued guys. Well, that's about going to do it here for the Fantasy Football Toolkit brought to you by us at 360 Sports Network here on the Cedars Sports Corner. Thank you for tuning in. Tune in again next week where we'll talk about wide receivers and tight end position rankings, and we'll talk about those 10 commandments of fantasy football and whether you are a saint or whether you are a sinner. For Alex the Saint DeLaverson, I'm James the Value Man Dotson. Thanks for tuning in, and have a good night.
This program furnished by Sporting Goods, 23 East Washington Street, Newcastle. Call 724-658-2535. Funding for this program provided by Washington Center Physical Therapy, Norm A. Gabriel, MSPT ATC owner.